Welcome to this special edition of Cronkite News. I'm Joey Carrera. Thanks for joining us. Our Cronkite News reporters work in teams to cover specific issues important to all Arizonans. Those beats range from borderlands to business, from education to technology. Tonight we highlight stories from the legal team, reports on government affairs, legislation, law enforcement, and the people working to make our communities safer.
After 24 years as Maricopa County Sheriff, the people voted, and come next year, Joe Arpaio will no longer hold the position as a self-proclaimed America's toughest sheriff.
Reporter Joey Carrera sat down with Sheriff Arpaio to talk about his time as sheriff and what the future holds.
It was a somber mood in Joe Arpaio's office, but he says he's a sheriff for the people, and the people have spoken.
I was sad in a way because I have so many phone calls from around the nation, even people crying. And that tugs at my heart.
Before he was Maricopa County Sheriff, Joe Arpaio's law enforcement career spanned not only decades, but continents. Now that he's no longer sheriff, he's been listed as a contender for a Homeland Security position.
I'm not going to go around, play around and say, yeah, I want to be Homeland Security. And I don't know. Nobody's called me yet. And there's a rumor going around, I think in Washington or whatever. So we'll see what happens.
Sheriff Arpaio didn't comment on pending legal matters, but Latino rights organizations haven't been shy to label some of his policies racist, a claim Sheriff Joe says just isn't true.
I would love to get together and talk to them, not through all these demonstrations, but for some reason I will probably never convince them who I really am.
84-year-old Arpaio isn't sure what the future has in store for him, but he has a message for his successor.
I wish the person that's going to be the next sheriff good luck and success.
Arpaio attributes his success to being surrounded by good people. Live in downtown, Joey Carrera, Cronkite News.
Every day, more than 600 teens sleep on the streets in Maricopa County. Valley Metro is helping these teens by expanding a program that provides immediate safety to those that need it. Cronkite News reporter Veronica Acosta is live at Central Station with details on this program.
All Valley Metro buses now not only serve the purpose of transportation, but for youth, they serve as a safe place they can go to get help when they're neglected or abused.
Without Safe Place, I wouldn't be here, and I love them very much. Every one of you guys.
Safe Place, which is managed by Tumbleweed Center for Youth Development, has helped teens like Vicky, whose last name can't be revealed for security reasons, through rough times.
In 2 days, they got me in my own apartment. They were so nice to me, so kind. They did not discriminate me. They did not do any of that. They helped me with my baby. They provided me a crib. They provided me diapers. They provided me everything.
And Safe Place will now be doing more.
And now we're expanding that to 900 new locations by expanding it to our bus service, which is throughout Maricopa County. So from Wickenburg to downtown Phoenix, there are going to be safe places everywhere that the Phoenix Valley Metro bus system goes.
The program will go from serving 35 Valley Metro light rail stations to all 900 Valley Metro buses, which will serve 100 routes across 512 square miles.
Could you imagine being a 14, 15, or 16-year-old who's been rejected by your family and not having a loving, supporting environment? You don't know where to go. Where do you go for help? Where do you go to find people who care about you? Well, I'm going to tell you where to go. You go to one of these buses and talk to one of our bus drivers.
Teens who'd like help through Safe Place simply need to go to any Valley Metro bus and ask the driver to get in contact with the crisis responder, who will then find a safe location for them to go to. In downtown Phoenix, Veronica Acosta, Cronkite News.
They're not Republicans and they're not Democrats. The independent voter isn't being counted or informed. Cronkite News reporter David Caltabiano tells us how independents are still fighting for political equality.
Democrats, Republicans, independents, and the Clean Election Commission gathered today to discuss whether those who don't affiliate with either party are treated equally and included in the political process. Party leaders from both ends of the political spectrum attended a panel to discuss independent voters.
So I think most people missed my joke about more campaign signs would fix everything on voter education.
But after the laughs, a serious debate on independent voter engagement began.
Many Americans in this last election felt like they were choosing between the lesser of two evils.
Paul Johnson, former Phoenix mayor and the current chairman of the Independent Movement of Arizona, also said the existing system is alienating independents, a view that top GOP officials disagree with.
Any consideration that independents as a whole are put in a box and don't have access to information or can't participate at the same level should be offensive to the independents.
But to Arizona's Secretary of State Michelle Reagan, the issue comes down to how voting districts are drawn.
If we really want to make our election system better and more fair in Arizona, the untold story is competitive districts, and nobody talks about it.
Secretary Reagan said the overly red or blue districts in Arizona discourages voters as a whole to come out and vote. But Johnson used a familiar word to describe the uphill battle for independent voters and those who want to be in office.
The whole goal is to make certain that the game is rigged against them.
A word that Johnson backs up with his own personal reason.
One is if you run for governor, and governor is just one example, every seat is the same. If you run as a Democrat, it's 7,000 votes, 7,000 signatures you need to get on the ballot. You need 7,000 if you're a Republican. You need almost 40,000 if you're an independent. It makes it almost impossible for independents to actually even get on the ballot.
Secretary of State Michelle Reagan also discussed the change in the presidential preference election to include independent voters, but says that's up to the state legislature. In the broadcast center, David Coltibiano, Cronkite News.
House members who wanted to lift the ban on such so-called pork barrel spending said it's an important tool for lawmakers who know the needs of local constituents. But that argument did not appear to sway the House Republican caucus, which pulled the measure before it could come up for a vote. Claire Caulfield was in Washington, D.C. for the story.
This is the second year Republicans have voted on whether to overturn the ban on lawmakers sneaking special local projects into the budget. Senator Jeff Flake says the practice is wasteful and corrupting.
And it leveraged higher spending everywhere, because once you had an earmark in a bill, you didn't dare oppose that bill or your earmarks might get stripped. So the bills just kept getting bigger and bigger. It's one of the reasons we have as big a debt as we have today.
At the height of this practice in 2006, there were 16,000 earmarks encompassing about $35 billion. The three Republicans who proposed overturning the ban today say Congress has a constitutional right to power of the purse. However, Flake said the timing of this amendment seemed off.
So, when people are trying to bring it back, you say, why? If we're trying to drain the swamp, you don't feed pork to the alligators.
In Washington, D.C., Claire Caulfield, Cronkite News.
Another veteran's service was honored today at Arlington National Cemetery, fulfilling Elaine Harmon's last wish a year after her death. Cronkite News reporter Dylan Eddy was at Arlington, where WASPs, Women Air Force Service pilots from World War II, are once again getting their due.
It took an act of Congress, but Elaine Harmon, a World War II WASP, was finally laid to rest this morning at Arlington, the nation's most famous veteran cemetery. This used to be the typical scene for WASPs like Harmon. But that all changed when the U.S. Army ruled last year that WASP should never have been granted access to Arlington in the first place. For Harmon, who passed away in April 2015 at age 95, that meant her ashes had to be kept in a bedroom closet while her family worked to overturn the Pentagon's policy on Arlington. Harmon's granddaughter was one of the people leading that fight.
So I was lucky enough to make it to the hospice and see her before she left us. And this time it was our turn to sing her Maresy Dotes and Dozy Dotes. And then she took her final flight.
Harmon's family decided to fight the ruling that kept WASPs out of Arlington. With the help of the media, they were able to receive more than 175,000 petition signatures. This petition grabbed the attention of Arizona Representative Martha McSally.
And so we were so honored to have somebody like her in Congress fighting for us and so passionate about our issue and making sure that it got carried through to completion.
McSally sponsored the bill that cleared the way for today's service. She explained her passion for veteran rights while speaking there.
We got a lot of things we're still trying to do, and it can be frustrating at times here in DC, but days like today make it all worth it because, we saw a problem, we fixed a problem. It helped veterans, it helped women. This is what I'm passionate about, and I'm going to continue to do that.
Today's service was a memorial. It was also a day for celebration. One of the granddaughters told me that today was about honoring their grandmother's dying wish and the WASP's legacy at Arlington National Cemetery. Live in Washington, I'm Dylan Eddy, Cronkite News.
There will be new limits on prescriptions for painkillers.
That's because of an executive order signed by Governor Doug Ducey today.
That limits first fill of all opiate prescriptions purchased through the state to 7 days. And all fills for children.
Governor Ducey used the order to kick off the start of Red Ribbon Week, 7 days that focus on decreasing the use of drugs by teens.
Parents can participate during the week by learning how to spot whether their kids are being pulled into addiction.
Cronkite News reporter Anthony Marroquin shows us how the Hidden in Plain Sight program works.
That's just one of the programs and tools announced by the governor's office today, aimed at helping people avoid addiction. But sadly for some, the time for prevention has passed.
All the kids that I work with, 99% of them wish that they could talk to their parents.
Angie Guerin works with people to direct them towards getting help with addiction. But she's also a mother whose children have also suffered with drug abuse, and so she has to do what many seem like a break of trust.
As a mom of 3 teenagers now, I will say that yes, I do go through their rooms.
Many experts say that it's important for parents to go through their kids' rooms if they suspect they may be using drugs, but not many parents know exactly what to look for.
There will be some parents on these tours, these educational tours of the bedroom, who are going to, for the first time possibly, say, I recognize that.
As part of that education, the governor's office has opened the Hidden in Plain Sight exhibit. It's aimed at educating parents about what to look for when going into their child's room. Experts agree that it's also important to know your child and pick up on changes in mood or behavior.
Opioids generally make a person's energy level go down, so you might notice that they're nodding off, maybe eating dinner and kind of going to sleep.
Some advice from parents: look for things that cross the line from normal teenage behavior and have an agreed upon plan before doing anything.
Every kid is totally, completely different, you know, and it's really having that plan beforehand is the most important piece before you do it.
Keeping in mind that addiction is not a failing from either side, but rather something that can happen to anybody.
The room will be open for tours through Friday. To register, go to substanceabuse.az.gov. Anthony Marroquin, Cronkite News.
The Maricopa County Attorney's Office and the Phoenix Police Department recently received more than $2 million in grants to investigate thousands of untested rape kits throughout Arizona. Reporter Zach Moran talked to one survivor who says how important testing those kits is to the victims.
The night of November 19, 2009 is one that Kim Hendrick won't ever forget.
I froze and I literally could not move. And it was like an out-of-body experience looking down on what was happening.
Hendrick was brutally beaten and raped in Scottsdale after coming home from a date with this man who faced previous rape charges.
He was biting my back, biting my arms.
After reporting to police, she went to the Scottsdale Advocacy Center where she was examined.
I can't imagine women who were victims of sexual assault that nothing ever happened with it, and they wanted to know, hey, was it tested? What happened?
Some sexual assault survivors have been waiting years for answers because of a nationwide rape kit backlog. New data shows there's more than 6,000 untested kits stored in evidence lockers across Arizona, and 2/3 of them are in Maricopa County. Now officials say that state funding, along with the recent $2 million in federal grants, will help clear that backlog.
I think we're moving to a point in time now where all kits will be tested, regardless of whether the issue is about consent and not identity.
Many of these kits have now already been investigated because victims and police already identified the attacker. But testing these backlogged kits can help match DNA to serial rapists with a criminal history, like the one who attacked Hendrick 7 years ago.
We want to have these kits tested in order to find out if this person has been involved in other similar offenses and their identity may not be known in those cases.
Today, Hendricks suffers permanent hearing loss in one ear because of that traumatic night. Her attacker was sentenced to 11 years in prison, and she hopes all rape victims get the same justice that she did.
The justice piece of that for me, I know has helped me, that at least I know that he's in jail.
Hendrick also says that he will be deported back to Albania once he's released. In Phoenix, Zach Moran, Cronkite News.
Governor Doug Ducey's task force released a report recommending legislation that requires all rape kits be tested. The governor is calling it a step in the right direction.
It's a problem that the Humane Society sadly sees too often. Last year, there were 179 reported cases of animal hoarding. Alexa Stukrath is live in the broadcast center with details on a new city ordinance to help combat the problem.
Up until recently, animal hoarding was not defined as a crime or punishable by law in the city of Phoenix. However, the city council recently passed a new ordinance changing that. The goal is to help the animals as well as the person who is hoarding them.
Just because somebody has a lot of animals doesn't mean that they're a hoarder.
These animals can have many medical conditions.
Mostly we worry about malnutrition or parasites, infectious diseases that might spread around in like close quarters, a lot of animals present, respiratory infections, worms.
You'll see everything from open wounds, they'll be emaciated because they're not getting enough nourishment that they need. They'll be matted, they'll have, overgrown toenails.
And taking care of them requires a lot of work.
If they come to us with obvious signs of disease, then we will quarantine them just to keep them separate so we're not spreading disease to any of our other animals.
Not only do the animals need help in these situations, but so do the people hoarding them.
Oftentimes they're in denial. They do love these animals, so they think the minimal care they're providing is enough, but clearly it isn't.
These types of hoarders are often associated with mental health problems, and that was taken into consideration with the new ordinance passed by the Phoenix City Council.
It's very important that people get help. And it's just as important to keep the animals safe, but we have to have a holistic approach.
The council felt it was necessary to get this passed.
When we go out and there's an actual hoarding case, it is also an animal cruelty case because usually unsafe means lack of food, lack of water, feces everywhere, starvation. We've had cannibalism. These are pretty horrific cases.
Getting people and animals the help they need in these situations is top priority.
If you see something, say something, because at least we can go check it out.
These animals can have a hard time finding forever homes.
They can be pack animals. They don't have the socialization of humans, so they're almost feral or wild. So you'll see everything from extremely shy and timid to aggressive.
That doesn't stop the Humane Society from helping.
Hoarding situations are so tough. They're so tough for everyone involved, the people, the animals, and of course our organization. Our mission is ill, injured, and abused homeless animals.
The ordinance is currently in effect. It supplemented Phoenix's existing animal cruelty law. In the broadcast center, Alexa Stukrath, Cronkite News.
For one Phoenix firefighter, the fight to save a life became very personal. As Jesse Canales reports, the call for help came from his parents' home.
These flashing lights symbolize one thing, an emergency.
But to Tommy D, they symbolize a second chance at life.
Tommy was sitting in that chair watching golf when it happened. He went into cardiac arrest.
My bride, saw me taking my last breath, and she called 911.
She ran to the neighbor's house for help too.
She came over to get me, and we went over and were able to get him onto the ground and start CPR.
Ross just finished CPR training, and he used that training to save Dee's life.
Phoenix Fire's Engine 20 responded as one of the firefighters hit the dispatch computer to find the address. He was shocked by what he saw.
It was the address that I grew up in. It's my parents' house.
Derek D says he tried to remain as professional as possible
as he brought his father back to life.
By the time we got to the hospital and they took him inside, that's when I stepped away, and it was definitely an emotional time.
Tommy had cardiac surgery at the hospital and took 4 days to speak, but Derek says his father was able to recognize him. Tommy says he remembers nothing about the incident, but he does remember what he told his neighbor.
Jason, you were looking at me like you wanted to kiss me.
More than a week after the incident, The heroes involved were awarded yesterday by the Arizona cardiac arrest survivors for their heroism.
Tommy is expected to make a full recovery, proving like his beloved Steelers, he's Pittsburgh tough. In Phoenix, Jessica Hollis, Cronkite News.
Tonight, an investigative report on a growing danger in prescription drug abuse. Cronkite News is dedicated to tracking the use of opioids across Arizona. The highly addictive drugs not only affect the user, but their loved ones as well. One of those drugs is fentanyl. Investigative reporter Carla Liriano is in the broadcast center with the troubling trend.
It's the drug that killed Prince earlier this year. Just a few grains of fentanyl can be deadly. As part of our ongoing project on drug addiction, I found out what makes this drug so dangerous when it gets out on the streets. Just this year, Pima County has seen 260 opioid overdose victims come through this morgue. Medical examiner Greg Hess says more and more of those deaths involve a dangerous painkiller called fentanyl.
When that type of drug enters the supply for people that are substance abusers, they have a increased propensity to overdose on that medication because it's more potent than what they're used to.
Pima County had 7 fentanyl-related deaths in 2014. That number jumped to 17 in 2015.
Essentially, it reflects the prevalence of the drug in the community, as we were describing. So the way that the drug is smuggled into the United States and where it goes and who's buying it and who's distributing it.
In the medical field, fentanyl is meant only for patients suffering from the most severe pain, but it's also causing concern among law enforcement who are seeing it in drug busts across the country.
What we suspect is that large quantities of fentanyl, pure fentanyl, are arriving into the country, and then it is being used to adulterate tablets.
Agents with the Drug Enforcement Administration say fentanyl originates in China, is smuggled into the U.S. from Mexico, and often disguised as prescription pills or mixed in with other street drugs.
The traditional dose that a heroin user takes, if it's got fentanyl in it, it will kill you. And you won't even know it's there sometimes, but it will kill you.
This poses a threat to the officers who seize these drugs.
Counterfeit tablets, they appear to be one drug, but when we go to analyze it, we find that there's fentanyl in that. So law enforcement who might stumble across it in a traffic stop or something and accidentally get exposed could have some very dangerous effects.
But fentanyl abuse isn't limited to just street drugs.
There is always the risk for the diversion of pharmaceutical-grade fentanyls from hospitals, medical practitioners, and even patients.
This father of 5 started using fentanyl while working as a nurse anesthetist. After administering it to a patient, he injected it into his own arm.
The heavens parted, the angels sang, those temporary problems that I was experiencing went away. And just for a few minutes, life was okay again.
6 months later, he sought treatment for his addiction.
This disease doesn't discriminate. It can touch anyone. You can be a priest, you can be a minister, you can be a high school arts teacher, you can be the doctor that you go see for your ailments.
Stewart's decision to go seek treatment allows him to keep his job where he still treats patients every day. With the investigative team, Carla Liriano, Cronkite News.
Occasionally, a letter reaches Cronkite News with a story idea. This one came from an unlikely place, La Palma Correctional Center in Eloy. It was from a California inmate at the Pinal County Prison. In the letter, inmates want to draw our attention to an art program creating murals just like the one you see behind me. They call the mural room a sort of sanctuary, a common ground filled with diversity, beauty, and a message of acceptance for all of us to come and study. Reporter Tyler Finger takes us behind bars to see these creations.
From the outside, La Palma Correctional Center in Eloy looks much like any other prison. Concrete walls, barbed wire, fencing, and all. But on the inside, a work of art is making the place feel like home.
It's light, it's not just walls and bars or same old thing.
One of those calling La Palma home, at least for now, is Andrew Valencia. He's a part of the prison's residential drug abuse program. He helped turn this blank canvas into a room filled with color.
This was the first time we've ever had this opportunity. And when you're doing prison time, you try to be productive. And all you got really is pens, paper, pencil, and you try to be creative.
And so that's why he created this.
brings back a lot of memories.
The group filled the room with what they knew, from the Hollywood sign to pro football teams.
This one and this.
You see, all of La Palma's inmates are from California, housed at the medium security facility through a private prison contract. It took 3 months to paint the mural in this room, but the lessons learned will last a lifetime.
I got the opportunity to express myself through art and accomplish this. That's something I've never got the chance to.
Juan Ulloa is taking the experience of painting this prison Picasso and putting it to good use, helping others at the prison make something they could be proud of.
The art class has gone very well, and I love what it represents and what they're trying to return to the community with the art.
This was from their first day. I've reached some of my dreams in a way because I always wanted to teach an art class, and I was able to do that. Because when I get out, I want to help at-risk youth and give them an outlet and be a mentor and let them express themselves through art.
For the prison staff, things like the mural are part of the process as they prepare them for a life beyond these walls.
We've done small murals, but nothing to compare to this. It's an expression, but these guys went out of their way and really expressed what California means to them.
Part of the process that these inmates wouldn't have received if it weren't for an incredibly caring staff.
A lot of times when you have this opportunity, because we don't get it in California, you take advantage of it.
A mural with a message that shows being behind bars doesn't have to be the end, but rather just the first step toward a new beginning. In Eloy, Tyler Fingert, Cronkite News.
That's it for this special edition of Cronkite News. For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.